Franchise is presented by FakeShep.net with support from MResell. If you're looking to buy an iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or any other Apple product, visit MResell today. They offer refurbished, top-of-the-line and next-to-new Apple products at a fraction of the regular price. And if you're looking to sell an Apple product, they'll buy them off you too. Visit mresell.com.au.
First, there was Warlock, and then there was Warlock Armageddon, and then there was some bargain bin piece of shit called Warlock 3, which cashed in on the popular branding and completely bastardized the series. G'day, my name's Glenn, and this is Franchised. The guys beside me are Jarrett and Sean. We are FakeShemp.net, and this is our final episode for the year. In this episode, we all sport hard-ons for the first Warlock film, then two of us maintain our stamina for the second one, before all of us finally turn flaccid for the third and final installment. So that's 3 tentpole salutes to get things started, and 3 limp dicks to bring it home.
Well, I think I have a thrush.
What the fuck is a thrush?
Farewell, dear shithead.
The lineage!
No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm wearing a piece of shit? Lick my plate, you dog dick!
So this is the franchise that we've actually been trying to get to for as long as we've been doing this show, and it all stemmed from the poster that was in our original recording studio.
Done in the bunker.
But firstly, how are you guys going?
Very well, very well.
Good, well and rested. Yeah.
And let's preface this by saying we've just endured a marathon sit-in of Warlock 1, 2, and 3.
That's why I'm so well rested, because we just finished Warlock 3. I had a good opportunity to rest.
You've never seen 3 guys on their phones.
I know. That 90 minutes felt like a fucking fortnight.
It all began when I think we were talking about I have a Warlock 2 poster and a Hellraiser 3 poster, and we talk about it all the time. And I think you mentioned, Sean, that we need to do that franchise one day, or we need to watch them together.
I think that I don't think there's ever a time where I don't end up in the studio looking at that poster, talking about that poster, because I have such an affinity for it. But yeah, I think that's where the genesis came from.
And so, well, we did it. We got to it, and let's get stuck into it. Beginning with Warlock, the first one, made in 1989.
In a time of fear and suspicion,
you choose to admit your crimes before man and God?
His coming was foretold. Now, he is here.
You know the signs. You are bewitched.
He has the face of an angel.
Channel me a spirit.
The charm of the devil.
Hear me when I say he's evil. Evil absolute.
And the powers of a god. Satan also has one son.
You are the first to have laid eyes upon the new Messiah.
Now, an enemy from his past.
Who appointed you executioner?
And a girl from the present.
Do you know what he's capable of?
Next time he's gonna kill me.
I'll not let him harm you.
Are the only hope for the future. This is the terrifying adventure that could set the world on fire. Warlock.
So I'm going to run a little bit of a synopsis for this one. And, you know, Jarrett, when he hosts Rewind and Digress, he usually takes his information from the back of jackets or whatever.
This much is true.
Do you know all of the VHS and DVD jackets for Warlock are really long, like it's a novel?
It's almost like somebody has, in hindsight, written a treatment for the film that already exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
And then I thought about, well, why don't I take like a foreign version and translate it?
Oh, that's amazing.
That would have been a good
idea.
idea.
I couldn't though, no, because you've only got like the screenshots. You haven't actually got anything you can copy and paste into a translator.
And you don't have 3 weeks to retype it yourself.
No. So I just found the shortest one I could. Bear with me. I'm going to read it out now. Boston, 1691. The gallows await the Warlock. The triumph of witch hunter Giles Redfern is short-lived as the Warlock escapes and hurtles himself 300 years into the future. Now, in present-day Los Angeles, the Warlock begins his task of reuniting the 3 portions of the Devil's Book that will reveal the secret name of God. If spoken, all creation will be destroyed. Redfern, who is also transported into the future, enlists the aid of Cassandra, who has miraculously escaped the Warlock's wrath. But the carnage has begun as the Warlock unites the first 2 pieces successfully and heads directly for the third, buried in the grave of Redfern's body. This is fucking spoilers.
Jesus,
central. It is on these hallowed grounds where evil magic will confront the strength of righteousness with a future of all mankind at stake. Fuck me dead. Like, seriously, that's the shortest one I could find.
That did everything except read out the last credits.
My God, yeah. Can you imagine the long ones? Like, bloody hell.
Insane. This movie has 2 taglines on the poster. Did you notice that? On the poster?
Yeah,
It's got he's from the past to destroy the future, which is pretty much what they used in the trailer. And then
I should have just said that.
Below it, it's got evil... What is it? The devil has a son.
The devil also has one son.
Oh yeah, it's 2 taglines, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
2 taglines.
If I just put them together, I wouldn't have had to have read all that fucking shit. Anyway, it was directed by Steve Miner, who I think we can agree is a bit of a favourite here.
Yeah, we champion
him. I mean, we were talking about it briefly. He's one of those guys who seems to always be around, but he's never done anything...
Hang on, wait for
Where
it.
are you going?
Where are you going? He's never done anything that is truly remarkable.
House 1985. House. We did a whole
Friday the
franchise.
13th.
Friday the 13th 2 and 3.
He did
classics.
Friday the 13th. I think where my affinity for Steve Miner comes from is that Steve Miner, I think, if I'm not wrong, is the only person to have directed both Friday the 13th and Halloween installments. Correct?
That's true. Actually, yeah.
Because he did. He obviously.
No.
He did Halloween H2O.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then he did Friday the 13th 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Don't forget Soul Man.
Yeah, Soul Man from '86.
Dear God, Soul Man. But he's one of those guys. He's kind of like a journeyman director. He's kind of like Peter Hyams in that way. He's always kind of been there.
Yeah.
He always whenever he produces anything, invariably it often ends up being very solid without being very remarkable.
With the exception of House.
Yeah.
Well, there's another franchise he jumped to too, and he also jumped into the Day of the Dead. He did that one, the remake.
He did the Millennium Films remake.
Awful.
That was awful.
Terrible. Not as bad as Day of the Dead Contagion, though. That was awful.
That's true. Right. But we do love the guy, and the film was actually written by David Toohey, who we know from the Chronicles of Riddick, amongst other things. And what's that time travel one he does? Timescape.
That's
a fantastic film.
Yeah, he's another one. He's always very solid.
Yeah.
He did a great film a couple of years ago with Steve Zahn and Mila Jovovich called The Perfect Getaway.
How good is that film?
That's a really good
thriller.
thriller. Really good thriller. Super underrated.
Super underrated. But Toohey's responsible for that as well.
Do you know, I wrote to David Toohey many years ago, back when I was sort of excited about writing, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna write a Warlock film. I'm gonna do an official sequel where I'm gonna combine the elements of number 1 and number 2. And me being naive, I wrote to him and said, have you ever considered, having the Druids team up with Giles and and he's like, no, I never have.
Oh, he actually responded?
Yeah, he responded. He goes, no, I never had. And he goes, and I've never seen any of the sequels, so.
Wow.
Yeah,
right.
You'd think a little bit of curiosity you must kind of go, well, where did they go with it? Even if it's not immediate, like 10 years later, just to go.
I would.
Yeah, I would totally.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I certainly would.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of actors that don't even watch the films they're in. But, when you're a key creator and you've created something, you're kind of like, well, where did they take my
perfect example?
idea?
I once asked Albert Pune if he had seen the Cyborg sequels. What's the one with Angelina Jolie?
Cyborg 2.
And then number 3, and he goes, no, I just can't do that.
It's weird because Peter Atkins, who wrote Hellraiser 2 and amongst other things, I remember watching there's a very lengthy documentary on the Hellraiser films.
It's a good one, 1 and 2. Leviathan?
Leviathan is called, it's split into 2 parts, but each part is 3 hours long. It's a 6-hour documentary on 2 films that actually only come to an accumulated running time of 3 hours. And it's way too unwieldy. But one of the more impressive parts of it is when Peter Atkins is talking. He's talking about having to write Hellraiser 2, and he brings up Wishmaster, and he says, the problem with sequels I try to avoid with Hellraiser 2, which isn't a problem that they considered because I wrote another film called Wishmaster, and if you've ever seen the sequels to Wishmaster, they are fucking awful.
He's seen them.
He's one of the few that might have watched them.
He's been there. So the film stars Julian Sands as the Warlock, Richard E. Grant as Giles Redfern, the Witch Hunter, and Laurie Singer as the modern day contemporary heroine.
I wonder what the Warlock's name is. Steve, maybe.
Well, what would the Warlock's name be?
I don't know. It'd have to be something very English, though.
Chazwugger, something like that.
Chazwugger. Don't know. Never thought about that.
Neither have I.
That's an interesting question.
Maybe his
you
name
guys.
is
We'll
Warlock.
Think about that later.
Warwick
Come
the
back to
Warlock.
that. Yeah, I like that. That's true. Works.
All right. So the film. What do you think of it?
I've got a great affinity for it. I grew up watching this film. I don't remember the first time I ever seen it, but it was one of those ones that my dad made a dub copy of it, and it was just on super high rotation in our house. And it was, I think Julian Sands may have been one of my first man crushes.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to get everything I could get my hands on in Julian Sands.
Did you watch A Room with a View? The Merchant Ivory one? You see his wiener in it.
I didn't.
Well, then you missed out.
No, he saw his winner in part 2.
Well, yeah, you did too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not all of it.
only the Blu-ray though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was
crystal clear.
Crystal clear, and 75-inch glory. The TV that is not Julian Sands wiener. It's an that Warlock. He's
hung.
He's packing a punch. But yeah, I got a great affinity for it. I adored it a great deal, and not because it was I didn't find it a particularly scary film when I was young. I don't know how young I was.
I'm not sure it's supposed to be a scary.
Well,
film.
yeah, because it always feels more of an adventure film.
is.
It's a quest.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly a quest.
It's one of those things where horror is sort of the foundation, and then it goes off in a certain direction. And rather than being a scary film, it's an adventure.
It's an adventure film with some scary
mystical
elements. Yeah.
What about you? Where was your first time?
Video. I remember seeing the TV spots playing on TV when it was coming out, and I remember seeing the ads in the newspaper, and I was psyched for it, but had to wait for new release and watch it on video. And the first time I saw it, I think I was a little underwhelmed. I was bummed that the song that's in the trailer, that wasn't in the actual film.
Got ourselves another
But
soundbite.
I think it was a film that by the time it hit weekly, I rented out several more times and just really grew to like. I think because I came into it thinking it was going to be more straight ahead horror.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's an adventure film. There's not a great deal of suspense in it because pretty much every time the Warlock's, you see him, he's on screen.
Yeah.
Oh, he's on the plane somewhere. Whereabouts is he? Okay, there he is right there. There's no real suspense build. It's more, like you mentioned when we were watching it, a bit of a treasure hunt adventure, cross-country adventure. Bit of a road trip movie too.
Definitely, it's a chase film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going to say. With my first time watching it is, I had like an inappropriate weekend I can recall down at Phillip Island where my stepmother took us.
Where's this going?
Stepmother took us down, and we spent the night sort of she had a house party, sort of maybe 10 or 12 people, all sitting around a kitchen table getting loaded, probably stoned from my recollection. I was a kid.
I was going to say, how old were you?
I was sitting at the table. I wasn't participating in any of that, but I was there in the conversation, and they were playing NWA, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this? I'd never heard anything like that."
Wild, yeah.
And that was that was the standout part of the night until they said, "Well, let's go and watch a movie," and they put Warlock on. And I was little, and it's like, first thing I remember is the finger getting cut off, and I'm like, wow, I'm in for the ride. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then I realised, hang on, this is a treasure film. I've seen a treasure hunt movie like this before, and this is the same structure. They've got to find one piece to lead to the next. And so it was a home video at a house party with NWA, and probably dope.
Amazing.
That is the one thing, is that, again, Warlock, I feel, it's not an amazing film, right? It's a very solid film. It's very enjoyable.
It's an excellent film.
It's for films of its ilk, it's certainly better than most. But that is one of the things that when you see films where Warlock's structure, its story structure, it's rote, right? It's very ordinary in everything it does. But in order to try and write, I say predictable for lack of a better expression, in order to write a predictable, structured film like that, it's very difficult. And to get all the pieces into play and make it all happen. And Warlock makes it look effortless. Warlock, everything just flows perfectly from one thing to the next, and it's a testament to Tui, I think, as a screenwriter. I think he's very, very
You're on the
confident.
money. It's fluent in every regard.
Yeah.
Like, every scene leads to the next. There's no room to breathe. It's sort of, just one hop and skip and jump.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're at the end, and you're like, where did the time go?
Yeah,
Like,
there's
that
no
was-
extraneous fat on the film,
except for the
very lean.
tin of fat that he drinks.
That's
Well,
disgusting.
There's not a great deal of time paid to backstory. You've got
not at all.
you got that intro. It sets the film up, and it's got great production value in that intro. And then you're thrust into modern times, and from then it's just a speedy chase to the end.
Yeah, some
I
machine
think,
gun pace.
for all intents and purposes, it's aged pretty well.
Yeah,
I think
I'd agree. Yeah,
the fact that these two main characters come from an old time means that feels right because they're dressed the way they should be. The 80s references are few and far between. Like, Cassandra looks 80s, but now we've come full circle to kids look like that these days.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's a
other
good
than
point.
just a few sort of dodgy sort of effects, the rest of it is pretty damn
I
good.
mean, you look at two films of similar ilk, like in terms of story, like Highlander or Terminator, And those effects are present in those films too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of you can appreciate that.
I
That
agree.
adds texture to the film, and that makes me actually like the film a lot more to know that it was an optical effect or it was done in camera, it was done there or live on the set. It wasn't done, a post house, by some. I won't say, undisclosed country somewhere. Could be here in Melbourne. It was all done, and that shows passion.
Sure.
and
It's also
integrity.
very intentionally, subtly funny.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yes.
that's the whole fish out of water aspect that they
Yeah.
play upon. But it's done very gently. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you laugh at it because it's
Yeah.
funny, but it's not like let's just look for another gag we can throw out there.
Totally.
It's all contextual to where
Yeah.
the story's going.
And it's all the comedy is surprisingly well timed. Like every joke that's meant to be a joke lands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you find yourself laughing with the film as opposed to at it, regardless of all these elements you're talking about,
Yep.
because it has dated a little bit, but the styles come back around. The special effects are a little bit hokey, but they're kind of charming as
But
well.
they're not that
because-
hokey. There's a few hokey moments,
Yeah.
but I think for the most part, it's practical and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the ones that, and like I say, the ones that are hokey, they're charming. It's fun to watch them. You're just like, that doesn't look like the special effects of today.
Which are
Like,
more noticeable on Blu-ray than they would have been if you'd watched, former
course,
formats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So originally, David Toohey wrote the film with a different angle. So he was going to be an innocent man that's been persecuted as a witch,
Right.
goes through time to modern era where he's also persecuted. So it was going to be like more of a political
Right. okay.
commentary.
Yeah, that doesn't sound.
No, well,
doesn't
when he
sound fun.
realised that
Yeah.
there was no massive dynamic going on there,
Right.
so he then made him an evil witch, which sort of gave him the crux of the story. And Julian Sands and Richard E. Grant were supposed to be flip side. So Richard E. Grant
Oh.
was the warlock. That's who they originally wanted to
Right.
cast.
You're right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Julian Sands, because he'd come from Merchant Ivory, they wanted him as the fresh-faced sort of
Right.
innocent guy. And then
Yeah.
he decided, well, let's just go against type and flip that.
And flip it. Works.
Good decision as well.
Very good
I mean,
decision.
and Richard E. Grant, obviously, he'd done With No and I by this time. He was. It never fails to amaze me whenever I watch Warlock. Richard E. Grant, really, as far as like acting goes, really carries the lion's share, and he does. He puts everything he's got into what is essentially a sort of hokey, fun B movie about witches and warlocks and time travel and all that kind of stuff. Richard E. Grant's playing it for everything that it's worth. His capability as an actor is so far beyond what Warlock asks of him, but he still goes above and
I
beyond.
think both of them, because they come from Shakespearean backgrounds, they treat this as if it's as important as Shakespeare.
I agree.
Yeah.
But also with a tongue-in-cheek at times, particularly when he's doing those lines like, you search hither, I thither.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell there's a play going on there.
salting the leather. He
Yeah.
knows how ridiculous it is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's playing it for yucks. It's,
I
like it.
It works. It's so dynamic like that. The other interesting thing is that this was released in Australia and most of the world long before America got it. 2 years, in fact.
This is a story I want to hear. Who's going to tell it?
Well, I don't know too much. Like Glenn might know a little bit
We
more.
should
but
preface this
you
first
know,
by saying
yeah.
that we have not explored the special features of all the
God, no.
Blu-rays. We haven't watched the commentaries or anything
Yeah.
like that. So there's going to be a shitload of information out there that we're
Yeah.
not addressing.
Yeah.
And that said, the Lionsgate, Vestron series Blu-ray trilogy pack is the first special editions of these films. Prior to that, I don't think these films have had any special features.
No,
on
and
them
information on
before.
them was very hard to come by.
Yeah. So everything we're talking about is from our observations as such. But all I know is that obviously New World was a bit of a powerhouse in terms of churning out, sort of not micro-budgeted like Blumhouse sort of stuff, but modestly budgeted films that were, doing decent box office. And obviously the Steve Miner films we mentioned earlier, House and Soul Man, they were both New World films, and they were both pretty much like the number one films over their summers over that, 85, 86 period. But I think that, like a lot of these companies, they're making the money and then they start making some crazy decisions. I think they made that Return of the Killer Tomatoes. I'm pretty sure they made that in about 87.
Which
You
is
know
a
that?
pretty decent sequel,
Yeah, I
if you
didn't
ask
think that
me.
made a lot of money.
No, it
though.
wouldn't have.
And they were making a lot of stuff like,
Mind you, it
Return to
spawned
Horror
2 more
High.
sequels, didn't it?
It did.
It did, yeah. So they were probably throwing money left, out, and right, and subsequently they ended up going bankrupt.
Yeah, and that's where Trimark
Yeah.
stepped in and purchased the film to put it out. And the success of that was pretty immediate, and they managed to sort of pump out a sequel based on the success.
But then this didn't. So then I guess my question would
Yeah.
be then, if it's been released in every territory other than America for 2 years, then
Yeah.
what was the hold up specifically for America?
Well, it might have been that it could have very well been they'd sold those foreign territories ahead of the bankruptcy because New World, I don't know if they handled their own distribution within the States.
But yeah, once you sell it off, it's then other people put it out.
It's
can
up
do
to
whatever
them
they
to
want.
yeah, it's up to them. I mean, These days, it's a little bit more regimented because of the internet. Like, you know, the US generally, if they have a film, they'll sell that film to, you know, foreign markets. But in the contract, it'll say that the US releases first and the other territories have to wait. The unfortunate thing of that is generally when it comes to those type of films, the US do day and date. So they'll go theatrical and they'll go VOD, which means for the other territories, these films can end up torrented, pirated, whatever. But I mean, when we're talking the late 80s, this was not an issue. I mean, the best kind of bootlegs you were probably getting were, you know, when friends were going to Thailand or Bali or whatever, and third generation VHS recorded off cinema screens sort of thing. So I don't think it was as big an issue back then as it is now. But yeah, that's probably it. They probably had all those foreign sales. And a lot of times these films, you know, when they are smaller films too, they sell the film well ahead of either production or the film being finished. So they've already set a release schedule. You know, they know what their strategy is. And New World probably thought, well, this is our strategy. We're going out in the summer of 89 or something like this. So, you know, it does get released overseas ahead of the US. And then, yeah, they might have had trouble. It might have been they filed for bankruptcy, but then slowly they're selling off the properties. Happened recently with Miramax, with Paddington 2. They sold that off, you know, in the States. And that was like the one good thing Miramax sort of had as leverage was like, well, we've got Paddington 2. We know if we can get into cinemas, it's going to make some money and get us a little bit out of the hole. Yeah. But they'll never get completely out of the hole. And then, yeah, that was they had to sell it at the end. And it was a shame for them because Paddington 2 made bank worldwide. It's a massive film.
So what was the budget roughly for Warlock, you know?
No, that's a great question. I didn't look. I think it was something like 9 million.
Yeah, I'd say
and it made
somewhere
like 15
between
million or something?
5 to 10 US mil. Yeah. Easy. Because, I mean, this is the kind of movie always that makes its money on home video, you know. Theatrical's a thing, but it pretty much advertises the home video release.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Interesting little bit of trivia about Laurie Singer on set. She's supposed to be one of the most difficult actresses in Hollywood.
Is she the weakest element of?
I honestly don't like her in the film. To be honest with you, I think she was miscast.
I think she's got great comic timing. I think she's vibrant and she's got energy and she's.
Look, she's always irked me right from the start, even when I was a kid. But the thing is, she's supposed to be very difficult, notoriously, and she had tested for all of the prosthetic makeups for when she was aged in the film, because she ages 20 years every day. When it got to the day of applying the actual prosthetic, she changed her mind and said she refuses to wear any of it. So they had to age her up with makeup. And then for the 60-year-old version of herself, the studio insisted she at least have cheek and chin prosthetic, very light, but nothing above the eyes, which is why she doesn't actually ever look old in the film. Which is the makeup is the best they could do, I suppose. But how's that? Like, you've agreed to this, you've signed on to the film, and you've tested for it. How do you just change your mind?
I know. I can understand sometimes the clauses when they'll go, well, yes, I said it would do nudity, but I didn't realize it was going to be like this. So I'm not doing that.
The context has
but
changed.
This is like so integral to the story. Yeah, your character's aging 20 years every day. I don't want any heavy prosthetics.
I bet if New World came around and goes, actually, we just changed our mind. We're just going to take 1.5 million back from you just because we're just changing our mind on the day. Just like should have something to say about it.
Well, that's true. Or we're going to just half your screen time.
Yeah, totally. And no catering for you either. Stay away from the catering.
Because there's a
7-Eleven around the corner.
There's every reason that Richard E. Grant could have carried that chase on his own.
Yeah, totally.
He's got a witch compass, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And a whip.
Yeah, so a lot of the violence that was planned to be depicted on screen had to be removed. I think that was pre-production. That's before they actually shot it.
Good decision.
A lot of it was too gruesome. So stuff such as the baptized version, which is the kid that he kills to boil the fat.
Hobie. Is it Hobie? Is that was his character name? Was it the kid from Baywatch?
Yeah, the kid from Baywatch.
Hobie, I thought his name was.
Yeah, that was.
Can I say that sequence where Julian Sands is sitting on the swing talking to the child,
real Predator-like,
is one of the most terrifying.
It's a disturbing sequence.
But in hindsight, knowing what's coming, it's a very disturbing sequence.
It really is. And but that scene originally, you're supposed to see the kill, and you're supposed to see it was a montage sequence of him breaking down the
body to the fat.
Yeah. No, I would love to have seen that. You know me, I love kids dying on screen. So. And the Warlock was also supposed to be depicted as Satanic Messiah, but this was omitted from release despite footage being featured in the trailer.
Oh, okay, right. So not the sun.
Not the
sun.
Actual,
the Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the internet.
Yeah.
The Satan.
And the mystic woman, the fortune teller, was supposed to have eyes popping out of her tits, and that's where he got the eyes from. But instead, in the release, they
didn't shoot it.
No, they get. No, I don't think they did.
Yeah, I don't think no one needs to see that.
Oh, actually, no. I reckon they did shoot it because I read somewhere that there is still screenshots of that moment.
Oh,
with
wow.
These
with Mary wearing all eye boobies.
Yes.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah.
They must follow you when you're going to move.
That's creepy.
It's creepy.
That is really creepy.
What about the artwork? There's two particular pieces of artwork for this film.
Both are great.
They are really good.
Yeah.
Both are really solid
Yeah.
posters. And the minimalist one with the white background, his the warlock and his shadow being cast that looks like Satan.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's very striking.
Yeah, that kind of minimalist, striking one. But then the other one, we were discussing about this earlier. The other one that has Warlock's face and Richard E. Grant underneath it in the cityscape, guarantee if you look into it, it'll be the same guy who did Highlander.
Yeah,
guarantee.
the UK Highlander.
They probably will.
Definitely.
We haven't had time to research that.
Yeah. I reckon I do like that art as well. And that's a note is that the old VHS, the Aussie VHS, I think it was first release that might put it out back in the day. It was a dual-sided slick. So it had both art on it.
I never knew that.
But but it's always the Julian Sands with the silhouette, sort of, the shadow behind him. That's the one that you typically saw.
Yeah, because I don't have the Blu-ray set that you have that we watched earlier, and I have the American release, which is the Trimark release, and that's the white case.
Yeah, because even I've got, I think it was it Shock that put it out locally?
Yeah, Vision.
Yeah, I've got that, and that's the white one as well.
That's the one,
So speaking of the differences between the releases and whatnot, I've always grown up thinking that Brian Usner was attached to this film because his name was always in the credit sequence, and on IMDb he's listed as a producer on Warlock. So I thought, of all the people that I can probably contact to get involved in this podcast, it probably would be him. So I chucked him an email, and he responded, and I'm going to read them out to you just to give you some insight into his input into Warlock.
To be fair, this is the first time we've heard this as well, so I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to hear this.
Yes. Okay, so this is because I'd already written to him previously about some other things. Hi again, Brian. We're recording a podcast focused on the Warlock films, and I'm writing to you to get some information about your involvement. Any information you might be able to contribute so that we can have our facts straight would be very helpful. We plan to discuss the Warlock films at length on our next episode, and we would like to know how you became involved with it. Hope you're well and hope to hear from you soon. And then about 4 hours later he replied, Hey Glenn, I'd love to participate, but I actually never had anything to do with the Warlock films, except for at one point I spoke to Trimark about directing a sequel. All the best. Brian.
What?
There's more to come. So I wrote back, my goodness, your name is on the opening credits and it's listed on your IMDb profile. That is curious indeed. Thanks for your reply. Then about 15 minutes later, I'm not sure what Warlock 91 actually is. When I dealt with Trimark about it, my recollection is that it was for Warlock 2. I did meet some people for story ideas, so that's all I can think, that somehow I got plugged in to satisfy some justification for using the work I did. Instead of Warlock 2, I ended up doing Return of the Living Dead 3. That's the end of that email.
Right.
I wrote back, very interesting. Yes, it's a 1989 film, released in the US in 91, directed by Steve Miner, written by David Toohey. It has you listed on screen as producer in the wonderful opening sequence, so that is definitely a point of curiosity. It came about at a particularly prolific time in your career, so the natural assumption was that you had something to do with it. Thanks for clearing that up. It helps us to go to the mic factually. Really appreciated. And then I quickly wrote back to him a few minutes later and said, by the way, Return of the Living Dead 3, stunning. We're fans of your work at fakeshemp.net, and that film comes up in our conversations regularly. I'm also about to watch Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 4 next week. I revisit that most Christmases. So then he replied in a final email, you have piqued my interest in the Warlock credit, and I'm searching through my files to find the work I did for Trimark at the time and my contracts. At the time I worked on a few movies for them and didn't eventually produce any of them. I told them that any monies paid to me could be applied to a movie that I did make, such as Return of the Living Dead 3 and the 2 Dentist movies. I would love to find out why there's a credit with my name. There must have been a legal reason for that. Then he goes on to say, wow, Silent Night 4, that's a weird one. Not very good, but there is some wacky stuff in it. I just introed a screening to Silent Night 5 starring Mickey Rooney as Santa at the Egyptian last summer. I co-wrote it and produced it. I also remember that not being very good. But I sat through the whole thing with my mouth agape. What a crazy movie. All the best.
That's great.
What a dude.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love how he's taking the time.
To say that, not very good.
Well, not just like he's obviously he's taking the time to do it.
I haven't got it in front of me. I did do a follow-up email where I said, not very good. That's one of my favourite Christmas horror movies, I didn't say that he doesn't actually play Santa, but,
Yeah, good.
Yeah. He just watched it last year too.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, I love that film.
So we still haven't got to the bottom of why his name was on the screen.
Well, he must have been toying around with some ideas. He might have thrown some concepts in, like, production meetings or something, and they've taken some of that.
But
Maybe.
then, interestingly, the Blu-ray we just watched, his name's absent from that. So they've obviously
Because that's not the
omitted it
Trimark.
because it's not the Trimark
release.
version.
This is the new world.
And what I told you guys
Yeah.
before is the day after we concluded these emails, the credit on IMDb had changed
Right.
so that his credit was in brackets to the Trimark release only.
Right, of course, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so he's
so-
obviously discovered something.
So
that
I've
he
obviously
hasn't-
influenced
Yeah.
the change in that credit. That was
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, I think it would have been. I think it would have been a very different film if Yuzna had anything to.
Well,
to
yeah,
do
that was
with
like
it.
that was like 88, 89. That was like
Smack
Schwarzenegger of of
smack bang in the middle of
society,
his,
and,
yeah.
you know.
So
Right, a
anyway,
reanimator.
eventually he had nothing to do with the fucking movie at all.
Weird.
Curious.
That's one of the most curious credits of all, and for him not to know it either.
I know.
And in moving along, in true franchise sense, the movie was then adapted into a novelized version, which actually included all of the original gory stuff that the movie could never do.
Right.
And followed by that, it was adapted into a 4-issue comic book series in 2009. However, Julian Sands didn't agree to his likeness, so they had to change the Warlock's character entirely. So the story's the same, but the Warlock's completely different, looks different, has a different MO.
I wonder why he wouldn't agree to it, because it seems like
Probably got no money for it.
Well, I mean, like all credit for to Julian Sands for his previous work, but it doesn't look like he's getting that much on the go just now. That I don't know. Curious.
And is there anything more you want to add to it before I do wrap this chapter up?
No. Just I think it's stood the test of time very well.
Yes.
I think it rattles along. I think anybody who hasn't seen it certainly should make an effort.
Definitely. I'm going to just wrap up with a tragic fact of the film that actually went towards creating the V-chip parental lock on cable TV boxes. This is the film that was responsible for that.
Really?
Wow.
Because there was a tragic murder in Saskatchewan, Canada, very similar to the Bolger case, where two teenage boys, well, a 14-year-old boy and an 8-year-old boy, killed a 7-year-old boy in really gruesome fashion, which I won't go into detail on an upbeat podcast like this. But because of that, they blamed the Warlock film because that was the last film these boys had watched.
Yeah,
So
of
that
course.
whole frenzy at the time, you know what it was like. Even with the
Yeah.
Bolger case, you had
Oh,
the
yeah,
Child's
totally.
Play and Stepfather
Yeah.
films that were blamed.
Oh.
You know, ultimately they had
yeah.
nothing to do with it, but anyway, so that is the reason the V-chip was created. So I think there's reason to sort of reference that.
One last thing I want to mention is Jerry Goldsmith's score.
It's a great score.
Great score.
Such a good score.
Yeah.
It's on Spotify if you want to listen to it. I
Mm.
do. I drive around my car listening to it, like obnoxiously loud listening to it.
It's legit
But-
on Spotify. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. A lot of Jerry
Really cool.
Goldsmith stuff is actually.
I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube as well.
Is it? Yeah. Great score.
Cool. Do we have any pizza shapes? Because I want some.
I think this piece of shit.
Let's put this on pause.
If you're looking for a new Mac product, Emery Cell is the place for you. Don't throw your money away on stupidly expensive Apple gear when Emery Cell provides top-of-the-line, totally refurbished products across the Apple range. Whether you need a new iPhone, iMac, Mac Pro, iPad or other Apple products, visit Emery Cell. And if you're looking to sell your Apple gear for whatever reason, Emery Cell can offer a generous price with full data erasure, fast payment, and free shipping. Visit Emery Cell's website to see for yourself. FakeShep.net uses their products, and they wouldn't steer you wrong. Visit emerycell.com.au.
From our dark past came one who would destroy the future. He possessed the powers of a god and the soul of the devil. He failed once, but now the son of Satan has returned. Let the Armageddon begin.
Warlock Armageddon, also known as Warlock 2, made in 1993. I'm going to jump straight into the synopsis because all of the synopsis is on the back of the VHS and DVD covers are short as shit on this one. So here we go. Reborn into our world, the Warlock begins a terrifying new quest to seek out the mystical runestones that will give him the power to release his evil father from the confines of hell and unleash the Armageddon that will destroy the world. That's it.
Oh, that's good.
Easy, short, brief, to the
You want,
point.
you want
That
the
pretty
tagline?
much-
I got the tagline.
Yeah.
When he comes, all hell breaks loose.
Is that the
Dirty.
actual
That's the
tagline?
Yeah, is that on your poster? Because this is the American theatrical
I'm not looking at a
it's on.
poster.
Yeah.
Dirty.
I just knew it
That's
as
a-
the
that's
son
a
of Satan
dirty-
Returns.
That's a dirty, filthy poster. That should be banned.
Well, let's just quickly...
all hell will break loose.
Well, let's talk about the
This
poster.
summer.
The poster is what inspired this podcast in the first place. I love this poster. I don't know why. It was always attractive to me as a kid.
I totally agree.
Is it because you like
it's-
Hellraiser or?
Well, that's the thing I was going to mention later, is that director of this film was Anthony Hickox, and he also directed around about the same time Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, and both posters are basically symmetrically the same. You got Pinhead on one, you got Warlock on the other, in the same position with the title font exactly where it should be, in the same spot, both holding, what appears to be.
Pinhead's holding the Lamont.
Yeah, and Warlock has got a flash of light in his hands.
Yeah,
or something.
One of the stones.
So they're very similar, and I've got them in our office.
And you got
side
them
by side.
Yeah. I tell you, I love that.
I look at them every day, and I wink at them.
Yeah,
I love that.
Nice one.
Anyway, so yes, with the success of Warlock from the Trimark release, I assume Warlock Armageddon was commissioned and released to a moderate success, I think, at the time. I think that was just because of the people, out of curiosity, went to watch it.
Yeah.
It was directed by Anthony Hickox, written by Kevin Rock, who did Howling 6 and Philadelphia Experiment 2.
Well,
what a pedigree of titles.
Yeah, I know, right? He's got a lineage. It's a curious film, isn't it? Because it's so much the same as Warlock, in even as far as its structure goes, right? It's a call to adventure film. Essentially, you've got the quest, which is to find the stones this time instead of the book. You've got the son of Satan presenting as the dark force. You've got the good warriors who have to learn their craft, but being taught by the mages, the wizards, which are their fathers. It is basically the hero's journey, just with some gory bits in it and some really slick camera moves.
This is the rock and roll sequel. This is like a really, really dark sequel. Like, this is a nasty, violent kind of movie.
Yeah.
It hasn't got the fun, frivolous nature of the first one whatsoever. And what I want to get to first is the one conversation that does the rounds on all the message boards and all the comment sections is this the same Warlock from the first one? Because the rules have changed. He's different in nature, in personality. So do you think he's the same character?
Well, if the argument to be made that is if he's not, it helps to justify part 3, which we will get to, obviously. If he is, then I think you probably get away with him being so different in nature and aesthetic because, we're dealing with what is essentially just magic and nonsense.
Well,
and there are no rules because
in the first one there were rules to the Warlock. Like Redfern had all of these ways to kill a Warlock. All right, like
true.
a Dracula or whatever.
Yeah,
There's ways to kill this particular type of menace.
Yeah.
In this one, none of those apply in part 2. Suddenly, there's a whole set of new rules, and these druids have been chasing for centuries. Whereas what's Redfern been doing? Like, there's a lot of contradictions that I can see. And then one of the druids, the can't remember the guy's name, the one in all the westerns.
Emmett. Lee Emery or something.
R.G. Armstrong.
R.G. Armstrong, yeah.
Got there in the end. His character at one point says that every 600 years the Warlock returns. Like, that doesn't make sense either, chronologically.
No, it doesn't, because the last one was 1600s, which is 300 years.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
So anyway, I don't know.
Is it perhaps just a script that's been retrofitted to be a Warlock, perhaps?
Possibly.
Because even the story is by Kevin Rock, but then the script is by Kevin Rock and another person. So there's a very good chance that the other person was brought on to doctor Kevin Rock's script, perhaps.
It's possible. Like we pointed out at some points in the film, it feels like a Hellraiser movie.
Well, I think
definitely.
I think it feels like a Hellraiser film, and that's largely Hickox's influence. That's his sound design, his choice of musical score, his just his general aesthetic. But I don't necessarily think that it's a Hellraiser film because of the script.
I'd agree. I'd agree with that. This is certainly not a better film than the first one. I think everyone here can agree with that. But Sean and I in particular have we have an affinity for this film.
I love this film.
If I've seen the first Warlock 20 times, I've then seen this one at least 30 times. I don't know
and
why.
And the rest.
I don't know what I'm drawn to. And what was really, really gutting for me watching the Blu-ray was how much of it doesn't float when it's in high definition. Like, there is a lot of this film that is really bad when you watch it.
Hokey.
We saw The Crew.
More than once. Reflections of cars hidden behind rocks. We see wirework stuff.
Suddenly I'm thinking, well, I'm watching this DTV movie, but I remember it theatrically. Like, I remember this being bigger than what it looks now.
Can I say I'm so jealous you saw this in the cinema?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because I couldn't find this in the cinema in Melbourne. I was in Sydney when I saw it. Because I remember being home in Melbourne watching the TV trailers, the commercials saying, Warlock Armageddon. And I thought, fuck, there's a new Warlock. I love Warlock. I remember that party I was at. Yeah. And then we had a chance to go to Sydney for my dad's business, and I was in Parramatta. Same cinema, I actually snuck in to see Natural Born Killers and Ace Ventura.
Oh, well, there you go.
At the same time. Well, I didn't sneak into Ace Ventura, but I snuck into Natural Born Killers. And this was playing there, so I don't know if that was like an exclusive limited run or whatever, but saw it on the big screen, fucking blew my mind. and then watched it like 30 times on home video or DVD. But this time I was just a little bit disheartened by how hokey it looks in high def.
It is. It doesn't. It's a shame.
The kills are still good though.
The kills are still good.
Yeah.
But it's one of those ones. It's like, you know, if the Blu-ray re-release, if they just had a little bit of money, it's things that could be tightened up relatively easily if they had wire removal and stuff like that.
Yeah, but see, that's the question, because some people were really unhappy when they did with the 4K remaster of Phantasm when they went in and changed those sort of elements, because they can do it, and they were subtle changes. They weren't anything major. They removed a bucket. I think that was pretty major. But yeah, sometimes the fans get upset because they're like,
I don't know if it's that bothers me. Those strings and things like that don't bother me. It's more just the what I'm seeing on screen was much darker on DVD or VHS.
Yeah. There's a lot more contrasty.
You can see beyond the characters and what's in the background, and that removes that theatrical sort of
the dark corners all of a sudden get a bit of definition in them. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like it feels at times with some of the visual effects, like the computer generated effects in it, like they were finished and like maybe a pretty sort of primitive visual effects CGI sort of moment, because this is what, like made in 92, released 93. So that's a pretty early, we had Lawnmower Man and stuff like that. That was, massively budgeted movie, doing visual effects of that nature. But I think that some of these visual effects were finished because they knew that, it'd probably play in the cinemas for a little bit, but it would really be home videos, and I don't think people are going to watch it in 4:3 on CRTs, it's not going to be,
and that's the next
you're never going to notice it.
Yeah, well, that's the next thing. Obviously, we watched it in a polished Blu-ray on a 75 incher. So
and in widescreen too. So
I've only other than theatrically, I've only ever watched it in pan scan 4.3.
Yeah, because that's always been available in a certain country. Yeah.
Even on DVD, like in Australia.
The DVD's appalling.
A lot of ghosting and shit going on in that one.
Just
so, Jarrett, you've not seen this one nearly as much as we have. So, what was your impression watching this one? Well, particularly straight after watching the original.
I don't want to crush you guys.
Feel free.
It's exactly what I'm expecting.
There's.
But it is.
If it wasn't going to be you, it was going to be me. So
it felt a bit hokey. Like it's the first film feels like a proper movie, and this definitely feels to me like DTV. It feels like it's those set pieces that are kind of memorable about it, but it's like, what about everything else? Like, I didn't have really any investment in the characters. The actors were, for the most part, terrible. The older members, like the one you mentioned earlier, RG
Armstrong,
and the chap that was in The Thing as well. Can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name, but you also
those guys, and even then, though, it's like they're taking it seriously, but they're not really given much material to work from. And it was hard to kind of work out, what was everyone's motivations? Like, I know it's the end of the world, and that's why these guys are teamed together. I was a bit confused at times as to really what was happening, and there was no, with Julian Sand's character, the Warlock in the original, there felt like there were shades to his character. I know he's inherently evil, but
he was also very human in this.
In this, he's just pure evil. Like, just he's just death and destruction. Maybe that's the way he should have been altogether, but for me that just sort of didn't work. I was like, I don't know,
certainly a long way from the original concept of him being a good guy.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely. But I don't know, it didn't resonate with me. Like, I don't think it's a terrible film by any stretch, and I'll definitely watch it again, but I've never had fond memories of it. I think I was disappointed when I saw it as a kid for completely different reasons. I don't know why, because it's something I should have loved as a kid, because it's a lot of show. There's a lot of... You see everything you don't in the first, you see it in the second film.
You get your bang for your buck.
I don't know what it is about it, but I think, watching it now, it definitely feels like that Trimark era, and nothing against Brian Usner's, Return of the Living Dead 3. I like it. I think it's a very good film as its own film. But I have a soft spot for Return of the Living Dead 2, and I think it's a good sequel. It's not a great film, but the first one's a classic. But this feels like it's in line with Return of the Living Dead 3, where it's like very brightly lit, kind of music video-y. It takes its own sort of direction. I don't know. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I would definitely watch it again. But I'll probably give myself a year.
Sign of being 10 when you watch it, as opposed to
being nostalgic for it.
Being in your mid-30s kind of thing. Like, it's I'm much easier impressed, much more forgiving. Before I went to film school and became a film reviewer, I will watch any old nonsense. For Christ's sake, it was in those days that I was watching that stupid Hulk Hogan film, Thunder in Paradise. You seen that?
I never
Hulk
seen
Hogan
that
plays
one,
like a Navy SEAL with a big jet boat called Thunder, and he lives in paradise. Like,
sounds great.
It's absolutely
sold.
Sign me up.
I thought it was the best film I'd ever seen.
Yeah,
I was like,
right.
oh my god, Thunder in Paradise! Like, I would watch any old tosh.
Yep.
What about Suburban Commando?
I used to watch
Classic.
that. But the point is that if I was impressed by Thunder in Paradise, it
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me that I was
Yeah.
impressed when I was 10 by
Well,
Warlock
an
2.
interesting note to
Yeah.
the production being like it's obviously cheaper and it's a DTV release. There was a different director originally attached to it called Frank LaLoggia. He's a guy that made Fear No Evil and Lady in White.
Oh yeah,
Ah.
I like both of those movies.
Yes, right.
Mainly Lady. I
Lady
covered
in
Lady in White on one of our previous podcasts.
You did, Lady,
did.
Lady
Many
in
years
White's
ago.
But the problem was the
very-
studio thought that his vision was far too expensive, so
Right,
that's where
yeah.
they call in the guy that did Waxwork. And
Well, it's a big shift because you look at Lady in White. It's a very slow
Yeah.
burn suspense.
but he might have delivered a film
piece,
closer to the first one.
Yeah.
in production wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So then
yeah.
that begs the question is the step away from the first one's production in terms of its aesthetic and style, is it a good thing? Was it a wise decision perhaps to step away to refit the franchise so early on?
Maybe had
or-
they kept to the original director, they might have had a franchise on their hands as opposed to
series.
just
Yeah.
part 1 and 2 because we'll
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
another 3 in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another thing that I find kind of ironic is that Julian Sands originally turned down the original film because he did not want to be in a typical generic slasher film. He wasn't interested.
Right.
And then when he read the script, after letting it sit on his desk for like a year,
Was it called Warlock, the script?
I think so.
And he's like, slasher.
Yeah.
Well,
Warlock.
he was told by his agent probably we've got a horror
of
film
course,
here
yeah.
from whatever
Yeah.
company, and he let it sit there for months on end, didn't read it, eventually picked it up when he was bored, read it, realized it wasn't what he thought it was, so he
Right,
signed
yeah.
on in a heartbeat. But then that begs the question, why come back to a sequel that is what you thought the first one was going to
Yeah.
be?
Because the first
Yeah.
one destroyed his career
Oh,
and he
pick
needed some
me.
cash.
Yeah, pick me because he
Wasn't getting those
needs all the-
Shakespeare
he needs all
roles.
the cash. Don't forget, by the time Warlock Armageddon showed up, Julian Sands had already started making a move into sort of mainstream-ish Hollywood.
He done
He'd done
Arachnophobia? Yeah.
for Frank Marshall.
Yeah, of
that was
course,
in
yeah.
1991.
yeah.
He
and
is excellent in Arachnophobia.
He is very
He's
cool.
great.
And it was around the time of Warlock the Armageddon that he was in the legal battles. He wasn't involved, but the film Boxing Helena
Yeah.
for
of
Jennifer
course,
Lynch.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
in 93 as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that film was marred by all
Leaving
kinds
Las
of...
Vegas?
He was in Leaving Las Vegas didn't show up till 94, 95.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still that golden period
Yep.
of Julian Sands.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
then, Arachnophobia, for Spielberg produced, Frank Marshall directed, it would have been a mega budget. And he's obviously taken a step back to star in, a sort of hokey
Well, I guess
because
because that is like that's a small part. And he's like, oh, or you could
I
do
need
the
a lead.
lead.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, okay. If I can do this and I can still do Shakespeare in the park,
Yeah.
But
I'll do
the
it.
first Warlock would be something he is proud of.
Yeah,
no
surely.
doubt.
I would
So,
hope so, yeah.
obviously, maybe the script read really well for part 2. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have any concept
True.
of it being on a back lot like it is,
Yeah.
and having all this dodgy CGI and shit like that.
And that's sometimes how it is, though. Like,
You're committed.
when you're on a film
Oh, yeah,
set,
of course.
sometimes you can be on a film set and you can just be so overwhelmed by, like, this looks fucking amazing.
Yeah.
This is going to look amazing. And then you'll get a peek, behind the camera and you go, God, it's lit really nice. This looks fantastic. And then when you see the finished product or a sales trailer and you're like, oh, fuck.
Is that what I'm in?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
shock.
it's
So,
one of-
like, sometimes you be even on that hokey backline, you're like, oh, it's not too bad. It's a
one of those-
studio.
It's one of those things
Yeah.
that never fails to amaze me when it comes to to films. Whenever a film comes out, people that disastrously garners reviews or box office or whatever, people who don't know any better always say the same thing. They'll go, "It takes 500 people to make a movie. How come nobody stepped in and said, oh guys, this is..." The reason is because there's only about 3 people in that production that actually cares how the film ends up. The rest of them are just wage slingers.
Yeah.
They're just wage
Yeah.
jockeys. That's all they're there for.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you've got 3 people in Warlock 2 that have got vested interest, and the rest of them are just there just to pick up a paycheck.
And by the
It's-
time you're in the edit suite too, it's like, well, what can you do?
Yeah, what do you
Like,
do?
yeah.
What do you do?
know,
Throw some more CGI at it. Let's get
Yeah.
that guy to do the CGI. That guy from India, he'll come in and he'll do some video effects on it.
But, look,
Yeah.
just to bring it back to a positive sort of slant, there's some really cool stuff going on here. I love the black blood. I love the
Yeah.
chick getting her hair ripped off. She's scalped in the
Paul
car.
Marshall
Yeah.
on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
like, it's-
Yeah.
There's even a Suspiria-like kill with the fashion models.
models.
Paula
It's very
Dare, yeah.
Suspiria-like. There's
Definitely.
some really good kills, very stylized kills.
It's almost like, it's a set piece film where it's just a means to an end. Like everything in between is a means to the next kill.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's kill someone. Let's get on to the next one.
And you can see that when Hickox works, and not even just in this film, in Hickox's entire catalog, you can see that when it comes to the gory stuff, that's when he's having the most fun. The finale of Warlock the Armageddon, as far as like design goes, The shot design, we were talking about it, the shot design is surprisingly complex.
It's always interesting.
Yeah. Like he's got a really dynamic camera. It's always moving. But when you move a camera in an action sequence, it takes time and it takes money and it takes rehearsals. And for it to look as good as it does on the budget they had, I mean, I tip my hat to Hickox. Man.
I think his Achilles heel is that fact though, because he's good with a camera, right? He can put a camera in these weird angles and do all these forced perspectives and whatnot. But when you put all of that together, it gets in the way of the narrative.
Yeah, it becomes a bit fatigued.
You're all of a sudden, we were talking about, oh, look at that camera angle, and look at this, and look at that. But you forget about what's going on. You know?
But again, I guess that's the definition of style over substance.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going in post-production for this podcast, I'm going to add some wind and a door that slams.
That'd be great.
That'd be really cool.
That'd be great. It's the third coming of Julian Sands, though. We won't count Bruce Payne.
What happens when Julian Sands comes?
All hell breaks loose. We've only got one beer, Julian, but you're welcome to have it, man.
Look out, it's Armageddon.
Yeah, I'll give you my wish, buddy. I wish we had more beers. Go hither.
There was actually a video game of Warlock Armageddon.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was made in 1995 on Super NES and Sega Genesis, and it combined elements from the first film and the second one, Druids, Rhinestones, Redfern, and I should sue because that was my idea.
Fucking ripped off. Never got a local release.
Oh, I know. I was going to say.
As far as I know,
I
that
would go so
sucks.
far as to buy a retro Super Nintendo just to find this game.
Well, you can look it up.
Yeah, shit.
Imagine how much it's worth.
Oh, I do want to mention one thing about Warlock 2, which we noticed watching the Blu-ray. This is a question. You know, hopefully it might be solved by the special features. Is the entire film ADR?
Yeah, bizarre.
It's a very strange thing, you know.
Haven't really picked up on it previously.
Neither have I.
And maybe that's because of the low res, it kind of like blends, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
You know,
it gives it something to hide behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes what you see affects what you hear, and I think that might be.
Yeah, it's just some of the dialogue. Like, I mean, all the dialogue, it didn't seem like it was diegetic. It felt like it was all post. And even some of the sound effect stuff, you're like, wouldn't there be some sounds now? There just seems to be. Yeah, it was a little bit off. It was weird, but to me, it added to the Euro feel of the film. So it kind of added to that.
That was a good point you made. Yeah, it feels like an Italian giallo
film with the dubbing. You know, you're like, wow, that's a cool kind of element.
It's certainly better than Julian Sands in Phantom of the Opera, Dario Argento's
fuck me.
film.
Yeah, right.
The worst. Watched it once. Paid way too much money to import it from the States when it first came out.
So did I. I imported that for about $60 or something.
It was outrageous.
Yeah.
And what a piece of shit. I think he gets his dick out in that as well. So he's a fan of getting it out. And like Sean mentioned, he gets it out in number 2. So if that's your thing.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
He's kind of like he's kind of like a Ewan McGregor of the Merchant Ivory.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's constantly whipping his tackle out.
A house has been in my family for hundreds of years. I didn't even know about it. Why don't you come with me? It'll be an adventure.
You may not like what you find. Do you remember?
Warlock 3, The End of Innocence, 1999. Quick synopsis. Over 300 years ago, a demonic warlock tried unsuccessfully to sacrifice the offspring of a witch in an attempt to create his eternal bride of darkness. But his plan failed, and he was banished. Until now.
Now, I don't know what the tagline for Warlock 3 is on the poster, but it should be, try everything once, except maybe this movie and heroin. I think that's what they should have put on it.
I mean, the synopsis is almost as boring as the film. And the synopsis is the shortest thing we've done for this entire podcast.
I think we've done more Googling and just general Facebooking during this film than we've done in the last month combined.
I had a political rant right in the middle of it.
That was the best thing about the movie.
That was like 35 minutes. If you ever do end up watching Warlock 3 again, you'll almost certainly you'll go like,
flashbacks.
Oh man, yeah, this film sucks. But remember when we watched it last time? Sean went bananas.
In fact, Jarrett and I kept saying, like, I just want to watch the movie. I just want to watch the movie.
No, you fucking listen.
You should definitely do the commentary track on the Aussie release.
Yeah.
When they do the 20th anniversary Aussie release next year.
Oh my god.
You could do it.
So this was directed by a guy called Eric Fraser. I think that's his name. And he's only done really one feature as a director, but he also co-wrote.
Try everything once. If it doesn't work out, don't ever do it again.
Stop immediately. And he wrote another Midnight Run, that direct-to-video sequel to Midnight Run. It was written by a guy called Bruce David Elson, who also served, his credits is all as legal counsel on heaps of horror movies like Return of the Living Dead 3, The Dentist,
Oh.
Leprechaun 3, sometimes they come back again, and Love and a 45, which is a really odd one to add on to the end of that.
Yeah.
But
Love and a 45 isn't a particularly good film either.
yeah.
Not that Leprechaun 3 is a fucking stellar work of art. Yeah,
They're
wow,
just some
this,
of the many films he's been legal counsel on.
this film is a piece of shit.
It's terrible.
Yeah, look, it's, you know...
Let's note that
It's a
Bruce
film.
Payne
It's
takes
definitely a
over the
film.
role of the Warlock. Definitely
Yeah.
not the same Warlock.
I remember when I first saw this at the video store, because, you know, obviously it came out, 6 years after the last installment?
Yeah.
I remember seeing it on video and I went, what? They've made a Warlock 3? And then I looked at it for 2 seconds. I'm like, is that Jeffrey Rush? And then I'm like, Bruce who? Bruce Payne. Never heard of him.
Bruce
and then I
Payne.
remember when I watched Passenger 57 next, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Of course I
Charles
know him.
Rain.
Yeah.
Bruce Payne. I will watch that movie. I never did. Watched
Yeah.
it today with you.
Oh my God.
First time.
First and
Wow.
last.
20 years down the line, and what do you think?
Oh, I wish Jeffrey Rush was in it.
I was working the video stores when this came out, and
So was I.
the preview cassette came in, and it was like, they split them between
Yeah,
two
yeah,
films.
2 features.
Can't remember what the other one was, but I
Right.
remember seeing Warlock 3, and I fucking flipped my lid. I'm like,
you
oh my
would.
God, how do I not know about this? I need to watch it immediately.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me take it, so I stole it and went home and watched it and put it right back in the drawer the next day.
Isn't it?
That's a
It's
film that would benefit from having a time code on it during it, because you're like, fucking, is that a counter? When's this thing ending? What's
Yeah,
this
I know.
time?
Well, I watched that the whole time. Like,
yeah.
And it's one of those ones. I think it's probably. I can't tell if we're being unfair, particularly you and I, Glenn, because you know all three of us have an affinity for the first one. Glenn and I particularly have an affinity for the second one. You know, so then when the third one comes out, your excitement is on high and you're hyped and you're ready for it. And then when it comes out, and it has exactly nothing that made the first two good.
I don't think it matters. If you watch this as a standalone film, having never seen the first two, you'd
yeah.
still think it's a piece of shit.
You'd be bored. You'd be bored.
Inexplicably, you know, they recast the Warlock. They set it in Ireland for no good reason whatsoever. Presumably, like
Wait,
you
that's-
mentioned, Jared, maybe
Just
a tax
kick
break.
back, tax
Yeah,
break.
yeah.
It must be said that Bruce
Yeah.
Payne's not bad by any means. He's just not giving
He's-
anything
Well,
good.
Well,
that's
yeah,
the weird
he's
thing.
just Bruce Payne.
Is it ever addressed that it's actually set in Ireland? Because everyone's an American in it, yeah? The
Yeah,
two
everyone's
people that come
American.
in, Bruce Payne, he's American,
Well,
and the
British
other guy
professor.
that comes in, he's British.
When-
the
when
woman
she-
on the road, maybe, yeah, she's Irish.
When she
didn't do a very good American accent.
When Ashley Lawrence, who, P.S., I should say, I actually quite like Ashley Lawrence. I don't think
yeah.
she's a bad
Yeah.
actor.
No,
right?
she's not.
I think she's got.
She has
you
no
know,
range and she hasn't done much, but
yeah, I don't think she's.
Yeah.
I don't. But she, like, legitimately, I don't think I'm perfectly happy to watch Ashley Lawrence in anything. Like, I don't
Yeah.
go, oh, for Christ's sake, Ashley Lawrence. But she's probably the best thing in it. But she doesn't have much to work with. But when she gets the,
I think that
the-
end credit's the best thing in it.
yeah, I know, right?
It was good.
When she gets the note saying she'd inherited the house, then they say the house is in Ireland.
Oh, did they say that?
Yeah.
They said
And-
that bit, right?
Yeah, and then
okay.
there's like a little musical motif that comes through. It's kind of like this Celtic-y-ish kind
yeah,
of.
right, of course.
You know, like.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was when we were texting
Forget
each other.
about
How
that.
about that rent?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
yeah,
Wait,
it's
you really
just-
went off tap.
Yeah, Sean, I'm
Yeah.
going to shut
Dude,
up.
should we leave? This is scary.
yeah. This is much scarier than Warlock 3.
But it's got nothing. It's got no style. It's got no style. It's
Yeah.
got no grace. It's not got any sense of irony that that it's laughing with you as opposed to you laughing at it. It has no sense of pace, no sense of like. There was one good vis effect in it. You know,
Right
the
at the
girl-
end?
yeah, right at the end where
Yeah.
the girl turns to glass.
There's a
and
long
he
way.
smashes her. But I mean, 4 seconds in a 90-minute film.
Oh, when the guy gets his jaw ripped off, that was pretty good.
That looked
That
good,
wasn't
yeah.
too
That
bad.
looked good. I would think it was more surprised by those things, though, because the film was so kind of shit that
Yeah.
when
Oh,
those things
something
happen, like,
happened.
wow, that looked good.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this film to have something that looked good in it.
Incoherent plot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, no rules, no internal rules, no
Well, like,
logic.
You mentioned that it was 35 minutes. We were into the film. We did have the one. It opened with, you know, something in the past, but we never really saw all of the events as such. And then it was like about 35 minutes later that
Before
we
you get your first glimpse
get a
of a
real
Warlock.
glimpse of the Warlock. Because by that stage, we don't know what the fuck the movie's about. Like,
Yeah.
she's gone to this decrepit house that could be haunted. She's heard a child, like, crying or whatever.
Then
And I'm
our-
still
then-
scratching my head.
Then our friends show up, and then we spend 15 minutes with her and our friends doing banal things like unpacking boxes or doodling,
Making pancakes or whatever.
Making pancakes, like
Yeah.
it's so completely incompetent.
All
that-
right. So
Hang on, why is it called The End of Innocence either? Because she's pretty much
'Cause
banging
of
that
the
guy
kid.
from the start.
'Cause of
Oh,
the
the
kid.
kid that was... Yeah, right. God, jeez.
I mean,
But that
that's a-
End of
that's
Innocence
a-
was like a long time
stretch.
ago.
Yeah, that's a tenuous link
Yeah.
at best.
yeah, but what do we think of the artwork on the DVD?
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
It
Sure.
looked like Jeffrey Rush. I think he'd just come off the back of
Look,
Quills.
It really suffers. I mean, from what I researched, it's got a $2 million budget, and it fucking looks like it, right?
Yeah.
It's really.
But if
they
you wanna-
definitely rented equipment to make the film with. and paid Ashley Lawrence some cash. I'm not
Yeah,
sure about
Ashley-
everybody else.
I would not surprise me if Ashley Lawrence walked away with $200,000 of that, like
Yeah.
10% of the budget, and then everybody else. Just
Bruce Payne,
if that.
he took 100 only because they gave him top billing on the poster and the video slick. Because let's face it, this film probably never played in any cinema anywhere in the world.
God,
Or
no.
many lounge rooms.
Or many lounge rooms. True story.
So there's very little information out there on the internet about this one. Not that it matters. So most of it will probably be on the DVD, the Blu-ray release that we just watched, but we didn't really get stuck into
There's
that.
a commentary track, but fucking
There-
who's
No
gonna
way.
do that?
There isn't a commentary track. There is.
Oh, there isn't? I
no,
thought-
not in part 3.
Oh.
In part 3, in the Vestron release, there's 45 minutes worth of interviews with the cast and crew, all shot on a crappy DV cam, and most of the crew are, most of the cast at least, seem to be incoherent. Like they're just like some people.
They
have,
drug them all.
Yeah, they drug
and
them
made
all.
them read off the screen.
When it comes to those makings of and all that kind of stuff, and it's only when you see something like Warlock 3 that you realize the difference. Some people just have the gift of the gab that can talk up the film, talk up the production, talk up their characters and the story and all that kind of stuff. And then there's other people like the entire cast of Warlock 3 that show up and talk ad nauseum for 45 minutes, which is half the film's runtime.
Yeah.
And they say less than what the film has to say. And the film's fucking got nothing to say.
But sometimes you find if there's, say, 100 people in a room and only one of those people, sort of steps up and says something of value and the other 99 don't, you know what I'm talking about?
No.
You haven't seen that Lady Gaga press conference video? Oh my God, it's the best thing ever. It's like the best 7 minutes of your life. You could watch that for 99 minutes, infinitely better than Warlock 3. She pretty much tells the same anecdote at every press
because
conference across
Bradley-
all major film festivals. Like
Bradley Cooper
Venice
changed her
Film
life.
Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he just has to sit there next to her most of the time. And
He
take
believed
it.
in her. He really believed in her.
He really believe in her.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. And she even fucks it up a few times, but infinitely better. So if you're contemplating watching Warlock 3, The End of Innocence, jump on YouTube, watch Lady Gaga talk about, Bradley
Star
Cooper.
is Born for
It's amazing.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's the end of the
She's
show.
got the gift of the gab.
Yeah,
That's-
I got nothing to say.
That's our final franchise for 2018. So
I do
we're
love
going to
the
take a little
franchise.
bit of a hiatus over the holidays, and we'll be back next year.
I do love franchised.
It's good fun.
Yeah, I had a good time, especially with that Warlock 3. Fuck you guys.
What a way to end the year,
I
man. What
know.
a way to end the year.
Imagine if that was the last film you saw for 2018. You'd really question whether you want to live in
we
2019.
should have just
Or
jerked
maybe,
each
yeah.
other off.
Speak for yourself.
Well, there you go. There's that.
20 years it's taken. I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again.
I will never watch this
I
again.
almost.
I
I
will
think it's the
never.
first time I've actually made it. No, I made it to the end. No, did I make it to the end? I don't know.
That's my pledge. I'll never watch it again.
I would never watch it again.
I have the DVD on my shelf right now. I'm going to go burn it.
I'm not.
You
I'm a
gotta keep
completist.
it,
I'm a
though.
completist.
You
I
gotta-
Although
need
there's that part of me as a completist. I might
I'm
keep
such
it.
a fuckwit. Like, I just have to
Yeah.
keep it because of that fact.
I'll come back to Candyman 3 faster than I ever will for Warlock 3. In fact, Candyman 3 looks like a really promising opportunity for a rewatch in 2019 for Warlock
To-
3.
to
Maybe
be
I was too hard on it.
To be fair, I've actually watched Candyman 3 more than
You know,
I've
we
watched
need
it.
to go back through all the franchises, watch the least of them all.
House 4.
Yeah, so that'll be like a special edition podcast where we do fucking Vegas Vacation or actually Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure.
Totally. The
Maybe
Black
is that like-
Sheep. The
yeah,
Black
the
Sheep
Black-
Yeah,
collection.
we go back to Lethal Weapon 3.
That's our next podcast.
Hey, I liked Lethal Weapon 3. No, I didn't love it, but I mean, Lethal Weapon 4 ruled hard. Come on. Hey, that was a discovery.
This is the point where I faded out.